This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with Eau Claire County. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Eau Claire County Board of Supervisors on this Wednesday, February 20. Oh, we have no light. That's interesting. Great start. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Eau Claire County Board of Supervisors this evening, Wednesday, February 20th. We call the meeting to order and would we rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And our Supervisor Cronk has requested that everyone sit at this time for the moment of reflection.
Thank you, just because I'm sitting as well. And I'm starting off tonight with a quote that was from a recent quote that was from the Wisconsin State Journal. It should go without saying, but probably doesn't, that criticism could be and has been made of every African American who ever agitated for justice. From Frederick Douglass to Harriet Tubman, to Marcus Garvey, to W.E.B. Du Bois, to Rosa Parks, to Malcolm X, to Diane Nash, to Fannie Lou Hamer, to Jesse Jackson, to Al Sharpton, to King himself. There has never been a black leader that white people, too many of them at least, did not find controversial. It is only years afterward, once you are safely dead, that they build monuments, rename streets, and say what a great person you were. I wanted to reflect tonight not just to honor Black History Month, but to honor Black history. And I also wanted to read a reflection or part of the introduction of Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Era of Colorblindness. Jarvius Cotton cannot vote. Like his father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and great-great-grandfather, he has been denied the right to participate in our electoral democracy. Cotton's family tree tells the story of several generations of Black men who were born in the United States, but who were denied the most basic freedom that democracy promises: the freedom to vote for those who will make the rules and laws that govern one's life. Cotton's great-great-grandfather could not vote as a slave. His great-grandfather was beaten to death by the Ku Klux Klan for attempting to vote. His grandfather was prevented from voting by Klan intimidation. His father was barred from voting by poll taxes and literacy tests. Today, Jarvius Cotton cannot vote because he, like many Black men in the United States, has been labeled a felon and is currently on parole. Cotton's story illustrates, in many respects, the old adage, the more things change, the more they remain the same. In each generation, new tactics have been used for achieving the same goals shared by the Founding Fathers. Denying African American citizenship was deemed essential to the formation of the original Union. Hundreds of years later, America is still not an egalitarian democracy. The arguments and rationalizations that have been trotted out in support of racial exclusion and discrimination in its various forms have changed and evolved, but the outcome has remained largely the same. An extraordinary percentage of Black men in the United States are legally barred from voting today, just as they have been throughout most of American history. They are also subject to legalized discrimination in employment, housing, education, public benefits, and jury service, just as their parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents once were. What has changed since the collapse of Jim Crow has less to do with the basic structure of our society than with the language we use to justify it. In the era of colorblindness, it is no longer socially permissible to use race explicitly as a justification for discrimination, exclusion, and social contempt, so we don't. Rather than rely on race, we use our criminal justice system to label people of color criminals and then engage in all the practices we supposedly left behind. Today, it is perfectly legal to discriminate against criminals in nearly all ways that it was once legal to discriminate against African Americans. Once you are labeled a felon, the old forms of discrimination, employment discrimination, housing discrimination, denial of the right to vote, denial of educational opportunity, denial of food stamps and other public benefits, and exclusion from jury service are suddenly legal. As a criminal, you have scarcely more rights and arguably less respect than a black man living in Alabama at the height of Jim Crow. We have not ended racial caste in America. We have merely redesigned it. I'm hopeful that in this reflection and encourage all of us in the work that we do, the committees that we're on, the neighborhood associations, the schools that we're at, our 9-to-5 jobs, or if we're retired at home with our families, or all the above, that we start to have dialogue. And for some of us, continue, but for many of us, start to have dialogue, open, honest, and respectful dialogue about race, equality, equity, discrimination, and our history, so that we can begin to heal and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Crown. At this time, supervisors, will you take your keypad and register your attendance? What's happening?
Hey. Sorry about that.
Supervisor Moritz. Thank you. There's a quorum present, and so we can continue with the business this evening. First of all, I'd like to thank all the supervisors who really take their responsibility seriously and are here like good Wisconsinites on this rather snowy evening in order that we can conduct the business of the day. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the journal and proceeding from January 15. I would look for a motion. Supervisor Miller and Supervisor Lavelle as a second. Are there any corrections or additions? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the minutes, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion carries and the minutes are approved. At this point in our meeting, we have time for public comment, and we have no one that is signed up this evening to speak. And just to be sure we haven't missed anyone, is there anyone who didn't sign up who wishes to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next part of our agenda, and that's reports to the county board. And the first one is coming from our county administrator, Catherine Schroff.
And actually, I have invited Tyler Esch. He is our emergency management director to join us this evening. There is an agenda item on our agenda this evening that relates to emergency management. But also, Tyler is going to give a brief update on responses that were made in conjunction with many of our partners and the county in the recent weather events. Tyler.
Thank you, County Administrator Schaaf and County Board Supervisors, for having me here tonight. Just to give an update of kind of how crazy this weather's been, beginning January 24th and going to February 12th, we've had 19 different severe weather alerts, whether winter storm warnings, wind chill warnings, advisories, dense fog advisories, special weather statements, and a variety of others. 19. That does not include the severe winter storm warning for today. Of those, I think here, this was 6 of them were between the week of January 24th and 31st. That was the start of the extreme wind chill issues, and then the remaining 13 were between February 1st and 12th. So basically, we've had a lot of weather. As we all know, we've all enjoyed shoveling and plowing snow and whatnot. I'll just give an idea of how this has looked. As of February 14th, Eau Claire County's had almost 52 inches of snow. And that is, the year that they run by is July to June, but basically from October to February 14th was 52 inches of snow. The average in that time frame is 36. And the average annual amount is 46.8. So even not including today's snow, we've already beaten the typical average snowfall for a winter. We've already beaten the February record, and probably by the end of this weekend, we will be close to having, if not exceeded, the monthly snow total of any month. So like a new record for any month for extreme snow. So this has left to a variety of different issues in the community. We've had major incidents. Most of you probably saw the major accident on I-94 a couple weeks ago. It had 40 different vehicles, including about 7 tractor trailers. We've had issues with frozen pipes, broken water mains, broken furnaces in the community, and really it's just been an impact to our community. We've been able to work well at the municipal level, at the county level, our partners throughout the county, to really make sure that our public is as safe as they possibly can be through these times. So just to give an idea of when emergency management kind of got involved with the issue, we saw the severe wind chill alerts coming up in January. We knew it was going to happen. We were in communication with the health department. I've got an email chain that's probably about 100 different people long, including all the fire chiefs, law enforcement officials, dispatch center, public works, highway department, county administration, municipal leadership. Pretty much anybody who's asked me to be a part of that email chain is on the email chain. And I mean, I think it was twice a day I was sending out alerts, hey, it's going to be really cold. And this is going to be potentially record cold, which it was. So we knew about it, and then the Wednesday of the week, which I believe was the 24th or 25th, off the top of my head, I don't have that. The health department director, Elise Gagese, called me as first thing in the morning and said, let's just bring a group together. We need to talk about, how's the county going to assist if there is a need in the community? And so within 30 minutes of her saying, let's bring everybody together, we had representatives from approximately a dozen different agencies between the city of Eau Claire and Eau Claire County, including Human Services, ADRC, Vet Services, Com Center, Sheriff's Office, myself, Health, and then a variety of other partners. It was fantastic for pretty much a no-notice bring everybody together in 30 minutes or less. In that time, we kind of started figuring out what are our objectives, what are the needs of the community. Is it something that, we need to be thinking full-fledged, there's going to be a major disaster, or is it something, no, do we just need to reach out to our partners in the county and say, what are your needs? Is there any issues going on? So that was kind of what we first identified as the questions we need to figure out. And then we also started discussing what our messaging would be to the public. How would we address the public with saying, we're doing something, this is what we're doing. If you guys have any questions, here's how you get hold of somebody to help you answer that question. We dispersed at that point, came back about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, added a handful of other partners, including the city of Altoona, Eau Claire Fire, Eau Claire Community Services. And at that point, it was really a discussion of Health and Human Services. Those two agencies had said, we reached out to Positive Avenues and the Community Table and Sojourner House. They're willing to extend their hours and work together so that at no point in the day is one of those businesses or one of those places not open. So, at 5 o'clock, one would close and the next one would already be open. But they said they needed assistance. They needed help to staff because Sojourner House on a typical night is understaffed from their volunteers. So if they're going to extend their hours, they needed more assistance than that. We also had worked and identified, let's use our already agreed upon memorandum of understanding with Great Rivers 211 and utilize them as a call tree for us so that our 911 dispatch center isn't getting overwhelmed with calls about broken furnaces and needing needs for assistance for heat and stuff like that. So we were able to utilize that service. We developed our first public message, and we also, having the City of Eau Claire's community services at the table, they were able to say, you know, on behalf of our transit division, we'll help you guys. We'll provide a bus for at 5 o'clock to take the individuals who need the assistance to getting from Positive Avenues to Sojourner House. We'll take them there. We'll stop at the library as well because that's on the way. And we know that the homeless population is typically in those areas. And it's a mile distance, and it was unsafe to be outside for more than 5 minutes. It was, having the buses was a lifesaver, literally. We were able to utilize county staff between Health Department, Human Services, and ADRC to supplement the staffing needs at Sojourner House for one night. Actually, was it 2 nights, Diane? For 2 nights. Basically, we let the Sojourner House take the lead on what they needed, and then we provided some staff within the some selected time frames to supplement their staffing. Eau Claire PD stepped up to the table and said, we'll have officers there to ensure that people are safe when they're at that facility. And that, we got a lot of compliments from the individuals who have to stay at Sojourner House at night, saying, you know, thank you. Sojourner House was not even following their own restrictions. If they had banned somebody for whatever reason, that person was welcome because it was too unsafe to be outside. So having the law enforcement presence was a huge benefit to their safety. Overall, a few weeks later, a week or two later, we had to utilize a lot of the same planning processes again when we got pretty cold again, except we didn't have to use the county staff we didn't have the need to offer the county staff to help Sojourner House those nights, but later in February, but we were able to utilize some of the same processes of, you know, let's reach out to our partners and say, do you need the transportation to get from point A to point B? Can you guys extend your hours? Would you be willing to open up the lobby of the Human Services Department and the jail lobby and whatnot, just so people have a warm center to be at during those extremely cold days? Overall, that's kind of set the foundation for some upcoming planning that we're going to be doing, trying to really work on identifying how are we going to improve and make sure that we are on top of these types of issues and incidents again in the future, should the need ever arise, which we live in Wisconsin, the need will arise. Yeah, it was just fantastic coordination, great support from all of our partners at the city and the county. And just, it was a very impressive, within 30 minutes, you had a dozen different agencies represented, some of which were coming from the new or temporary city hall on Prairie Lane, and yet they made it their priority that day, at that exact moment, to come and assist us because they knew the public safety was vital. So that's what I have for that. Any questions on any of that response or anything? Yes.
I commend you. I'm really thrilled. I did not know all those things were happening, so thank you. The other comment I have is that once you opened the lobbies when it was needed for, how did people know about these things? How are you making sure that people understand what they can do and where they can go?
So the question was about how did we communicate to the public about the different places that were open. It was typically done through direct phone calls to like Sojourner House and Positive Avenues, and because they know who the clientele are that are looking for the assistance. The street ministry group, I believe Pastor Mike Henry, I believe is his name, he was getting part of our internal communications that were going around. So between those different organizations, we were able to capture most of the population that would be in need. And then otherwise, we also utilize social media. There was a link on the county website for a while about dialing 211 if you have an issue with regards to heating and stuff like that. Yep. Anything else?
Supervisor Gibson?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. as long as Tyler is up here right now, and as long as our administrator pointed out that we have emergency management plan resolution on our agenda later on, if Tyler could kind of explain that right now, the importance and why we have that plan? That way then we don't have to have him come back up here or anything later if there's questions.
It'll just give you some additional information
Correct.
prior to the time that we come to that resolution. So please, if you could do that.
Yes. So later on, there'll be an agenda a resolution to approve the county's hazard mitigation plan. This is a plan that is required every 5 years by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. And the value of this plan is not to help answer how we respond or recover from a disaster. It's how we mitigate against a disaster. A couple years ago, following the September 2016 flooding, we were able to utilize mitigation grant dollars to buy out a property in the town of Seymour. That is not an option if we do not have this plan in place. As well, we're working with different communities on like storm shelters for tornado safety and mobile home parks and whatnot. And again, that requires this plan to be in place. So the idea with this plan, or coming together with this plan, it's required every 5 years. City and county had never done a joint plan together before this time, but it worked very well. We brought it together. Pardon me, so I kept where I'm reading out of. So the county had its steering committee, had a variety of county partners, city partners, municipal leaders. City had their own steering committee. There was some overlap on that. And then we really let the Regional Planning Commission, West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, take the lead in writing the plan for us and facilitating all these meetings. So Chris Strait from the RPC and I kind of co-led these. We talked to like Towns Association, fire chiefs meetings, met with pretty much every emergency service agency or some sort of department meeting like that. We talked to all the cities and villages and various organizations to identify, what are repetitive issues that we see in our community? Where are we seeing repeated lightning strikes, street flooding, power outages, and other issues? So by meeting with those individuals, we could kind of capture what is the importance within the plan of pursuing mitigation for some of these different items. Obviously, we're in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Flood mitigation and tornado mitigation are the two highest things that came to the top of the list, but we also pursued more of an all hazards approach. We talked about cybersecurity for the first time. We talked about just kind of expanding beyond the natural hazards and becoming more of a man-made and all hazards approach, because unfortunately we are seeing more of these all hazards issues. Anything from an active threats incident to cyber incident to some of these other big issues, power outages and whatnot. By doing more of the all hazards approach instead of the natural hazards, we're also opening up the option in the next decade or so that if we would ever want to pursue accreditation for emergency management, we've already started that process. So that hazard mitigation plan really helps us start with the idea of, pursuing other grants should they come up and the opportunities arise. Plus, it helps us long-term with providing even more opportunities for our emergency management program to grow as a unit. So overall, the cost of we received a grant from FEMA that paid about $35,000, a little over that, and between the city of Eau Claire and Eau Claire County's steering committees and staff time, we provided another $15,000, which was above the required $12,000 of in-kind donation to meet the grant requirements. So there is besides the staff time, there was no additional cost to the county. It was required and allows us to pursue additional grants in the future. We specifically met with different individuals to see, how we can make sure that this plan ties into some of the grants they're pursuing in the future or some of the strategic initiatives going on within the city and county that could be tied in and get a few more points by being relevant to different plans. So we really tried to cover all of our bases, work well with everybody we could, and overall we have a very, very good plan. So any questions on that?
And there will be opportunity for discussion
Right.
when we come up to the resolution. Supervisor Moritz?
Yes. How do you reach out to Fall Creek, Augusta, Fairchild? Is there a point person there? How do they know that these services are available?
So each municipality has a designated emergency manager. Typically, it's more of a secondary job title, like the police chief for Augusta is also their emergency manager. So I have their contact information. I know all their law enforcement chiefs. I know their fire chiefs. I work very closely with them, and that's how I typically get involved in some of the smaller municipalities.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much
Yes.
for that additional information. And Supervisor Coffey, I think, has a question.
You spoke to us at Planning and Development about the plan, and we got to read it. I thought it was very thorough and very well done. I love the collaboration. We
Yes.
talked a bit about cybersecurity, and I wondered how it was expanded from what we had seen in your initial piece.
So I went back and chatted a little bit more with Chris Schrader, the Regional Planning Commission, about that topic, about, is there some stuff we're missing with cybersecurity? And your point in the P&D meeting was more on the idea of, businesses and some of their security. This plan is built for the county. We'll always try to find ways to make sure that we're incorporating a level of appropriate planning for everybody. But as far as the county went, this was really worked well with what the IAS departments from the city and county and municipal leaders had informed us. Yep, thank you.
Supervisor McKinney?
Thank you. I just wanted to also recognize the citizens of the city who responded to a social media campaign for raising funds for the Chippewa Valley Street Ministry, went
Yep.
over $30,000. So
Yep.
thanks to the citizens.
Definitely. They did. That was excellent to see.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next item is on the WCA Legislative Exchange. And do you want to start that discussion?
Certainly.
pick
So
up.
there are members of the Eau Claire County team, Chair Nick Smyer, Vice Chair Bates, and myself, as well as Connie Russell, were at the WCA Legislative Exchange at the beginning of February. During that time, we saw a number of different presentations. You should have gotten a link to many of those presentations through Wisconsin Eye. If there is additional information that you would like to see or more in-depth information, we can help you obtain that. What I was hoping to focus a little bit of the presentation on tonight was our meetings with our legislators. We were able to meet with 2 of our legislators and 2 of their staff while we were in Madison. And the message that we shared with them was in regard to some of the fiscal pressures that the county is experiencing that are primarily due to different relationships that we have with the state of Wisconsin as a provider of services on behalf of the state. An area that we highlighted was in Children Protective Services. That is a program that is managed at the local level on behalf of the state of Wisconsin. And it is meant to be fully funded by the state of Wisconsin. In 2018, we had a $2.8 million deficit in that fund. And what you're going to actually hear tonight is a presentation from Diane Cable, our Human Services Director, about a number of things that we at the county level are doing to not only mitigate that cost, but actually make significant change in some of the programming and actually partner with others in child welfare reform and other forward-thinking practices that will have a positive effect not only on children, but also on our economic well-being. The other focus point was how every county of the 72 counties is unique. And Eau Claire County has had a history of being frugal and prudent. And that caught up with the county when the state imposed levy limits. And that has created a unique situation where even with the combination of our regular operational budget and the debt that we incur in order to maintain our infrastructure, we're still in the lowest quartile in the state for taxation. And we had a conversation with them about the way in which our finances fund our operations and whether or not they thought that was a prudent way to actually run an organization that is the society and the community are highly dependent upon. And so I anticipate that we'll have more conversations with them.
I think that the one thing that we know for sure is that really when it comes to being able to discuss the issues that we have on the county level, it's all about building relationships. You really have to know the individuals who are representing us. And we had the very good fortune of having two new individuals from our area, Jeff Smith, Senator Jeff Smith, and also we had Jody Emerson, gee whiz. And again, both of them extremely interested. And also, I think the thing that made me feel really comfortable was the fact that they were well aware of what we were speaking of and really seemed to have an understanding that indeed things couldn't continue the way they are as far as sustainability for counties and their funding. The other thing that I found was important for us is that even though you'd like to talk to the legislators, sometimes it's just as important to develop a knowledge and also relationships with the individuals who are staffers. Because often they're the ones that take your emails, read your letters, answer your phone calls, and relay the information. So the more that we can actually make them aware of what our issues are and what kind of help that we need from them, I think the better. We have a legislative breakfast coming up before too very long. It also gave us a chance to kind of plug that and encourage them to come. I found it to be also extremely important to know who the people on board are actually consist of. All of the individuals making up the administrative staff for the governor were there. And to have that opportunity was really also just something that was important to us. I also thought it was important that two of the individuals came through the Wisconsin Counties Association. One is a veteran service officer, and the other individual is in
Department of Transportation.
Craig Thompson. So for us to be able to have a better link between county government and the state, I think is really very, very important. Connie, you were there as well. Would you like to add anything?
Well, I think I was impressed with what the Wisconsin Counties Association does. At one point, the minority leader of the Senate commented that a lot of people who lobby with them and come visit them have a one-page summary. She said the Wisconsin Counties Association comes with a binder. So I think they're representing the counties very well. So I was impressed with that. That's about all.
The individuals that are the lobbyists for the Wisconsin Counties Association are just extremely well informed as to the issues at hand, whether it's infrastructure, child protective services, or whatever. They come prepared, no question. Any questions at all? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next report that we have, and it's my pleasure to welcome back Diane Cable, our Human Services Director, to give us a report this evening.
And it looks like Tom Worth will also be joining.
And Tom Worth as well.
Okay.
Well, good evening, everyone, and it's our pleasure to be here to tell you a little bit about the direction, our new direction as a Human Services Department that we have been embarking upon. Again, my name is Diane Cable.
And I'm Tom Worth.
So, wow, my slide doesn't fit the screen. Okay. I didn't know I was that creative to do that. So it'll be okay. You can listen to me instead, I guess. So as you know, and I've shared this before, in the early 1980s, Eau Claire County Human Services became the Social Services and Unified Services came together and formed a Human Services Department. And the responsibility of the department is for the provision of both mental health and social needs of individuals and families. Structurally, then, Human Services remained as a social services type structure. The county approached the operation of the department through contracting out for the mental health and substance abuse service needs, with the exception of the CSP program, the Community Support Program. Otherwise, all of those services for mental health and behavioral health services were contracted out, and the department then delivered and provided in a structure for child welfare, family services, economic support, and some adult services. The department itself is now in 2006, has always been evolving, but since 2016, since with the inception of deciding to move forward with behavioral health services, is we are evolving. We said we are going to become a trauma-informed organization, and this led us to say we need to do things and choose to do things in a new way.
So in that restructuring in 2016, we really broke the organization down a little bit differently, and we created the Wellness and Recovery Services, which really includes those areas of behavioral health services, family services, and economic support. And then we have administrative services, and those are our fiscal services as well as our organizational services. And you folks have been, some of you have been here for quite a while, and we've been in this business for a long time, and we are really kind of getting sick of hearing we've got too many kids in care, we've got too many hospitalizations, we've got too many adults in placement, we're over budget too many times, and we have too many bad outcomes for kids and families. So we've really embarked on doing things differently. We agree that all those things are accurate, and we need to change those things.
So what we said is that this is really urgent. And this is supported through some of the work that we're doing with the nonprofit that we'll share in a little bit, ALEA. ALEA organization is commissioned a study that researched the outcomes around foster care. And for every dollar we invest in the foster care system, we lose $3 to $9. That's just the dollars part. That's not even talking about the impact that that has on children and families. And what we have said is we can't operate this way anymore. And so we said, this is urgent. We need to do this differently. And so we engaged and met with the nonprofit ALEA that has been doing unsystem work to transform and say, we need to look at our systems and how we operate in a different way. Amelia Frank-Meyer is the CEO of ALEA. Prior, she worked for a new treatment home, and is now working as the CEO with ALEA. That work with them is to truly reform and change how we think about our system work with families. And so Eau Claire County became part of a cohort amongst with 4 other jurisdictions across the nation. And in Wisconsin, we have 2 jurisdictions, both Eau Claire County and Waupaca County, who are leading the way here in Wisconsin to really challenge our state leaders to really think about the system differently. A few minutes ago, you heard Catherine talk about when they were at the WCA Legislative Day about really talking to the leaders about we can't continue to support the current system the way it is operating. So there is actions and movement through WCA to be requesting more dollars to help support the child welfare system. But it isn't just that. It's also looking at the system in a whole new way because it isn't working. So with that, we embarked upon knowing that the best system is really our family systems, and that our vision is to support families. So family connections are always preserved and strengthened is our vision. It is the vision that we follow and use as our guide in everything that we do. From how we bring staff aboard, how we train staff, how we budget, how we operate, how we make all of our decisions, needs to be connected with carrying out this vision. What we learned is that being trauma-informed is just not enough, and that we certainly must stop causing trauma by severing relational bonds, and that family solution and the foundation of lifelong is the foundation for the lifelong well-being of everyone. And we are talking about family in the broadest connection. For some people, that is their neighborhood. For some people, that is their biological family. For some people, that is their teacher. Whatever that is for that individual is that family that we need to be supporting.
We know that this work is transformational and difficult. We know that just adding more foster care, just as adding more cameras, or more candles, does not create better light. What creates better light is light bulbs. And so this work, again, is transformational in that respect, that we need to do things differently. The next one is another one of those transformational things that we have learned over historical times. We can get from point A to point B with a horse and buggy. We can do it a lot more efficiently and quicker with a car. So when we talk about change, and we oftentimes talk about change, we ask who is willing to change? And usually the hands go up, and people are willing to change. People understand that. But then when you ask the question, who wants to change, the heads kind of go down, because we're used to doing things the way we have done them for years. And this work is really talking about changing the way we are doing our work. And that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of person power. So as we are embarking on this change, it's a lot of work, and our staff are feeling some of the effects of that work and questioning, what is it that we've been doing all along if it's not been effective? And as Diane said, the report on return on investment, how many kids do we put in foster care? How much money are we losing as a society because of that is profound.
So as we said we can't just keep asking for more money all the time. The system needs more money all across, not just in Eau Claire County. But we also have to look at how we are going about doing this work. And as this slide demonstrates, that we can all agree that we want to see change, but sometimes we want to keep coming back to doing it always the way we've always done it. So we are part of a cohort to really help create a new system. We have to take care of where we're at. We have to attend to what we've got right now and support it and take care of it while we develop this new way of doing work. And so we have these guiding principles to help guide us through this, in which we protect relational connections as being absolutely sacred. We heard Chairperson Bates say relationships are key. Relationships are incredibly key in how we help connect. We have to nurture the capacity of joy. We dare to share power with those who we are working with. We insist on racial equity and radical inclusion. We trust the wisdom of children and families to design their own futures. We know families know what's best for them. We commit to intergenerational well-being, and if all else, we do what love would do, what is in the best interest of humans. So our vision is family connections are always preserved and strengthened. And here's what this looks like across the agency.
So within our within our behavioral health services area, you've all heard about comprehensive community services. So far, we have taken in 784 referrals for individuals into our comprehensive community services. And again, just as a reminder, that serves individuals with with mental health issues or substance abuse issues. By the end of 2018, we were serving approximately 165, 170 individuals. And we are, with those services, we are preventing hospitalizations and placements. We know that our mental health clinic has come on board within the last 8 weeks. And so far, to date, we have served 103 unduplicated individuals in that 8-week period of time. That clinic has allowed us to really use those services and the expertise of those staff to really help support the families that we have been working with. I believe 73 of those families or 75 of those families were actually families that were involved with the department, and this just augmented or improved their level of service.
So let me give you a quick example of something that has occurred. Somebody may be discharged and leaving the jail to go out into the community, and they're struggling. They are being walked over to our department by the social worker who's working with those individuals who help them reintegrate, and recognizing that this person is in crisis and getting connected to a therapist immediately, which helped to prevent a possible hospitalization. It also helped to prevent possible homelessness. They have been connected right away, and this is a change and a way in which we're helping to make those connections.
The other area that we've taken some real active steps on is in crisis services. And one of the things that we have done with our partner organizations, including law enforcement and Corporation Counsel's Office, is to work to get crisis alerts out to the squad cars. So we do a crisis plan with individuals that we work with. That crisis plan, if the client is so inclined and willing, can be released to law enforcement. And we've been able to develop a system so that as the squad car is responding to the scene, they know if they have the name of the client, of the individual who they are responding to, or the address, they know that that person might suffer from a substance abuse disorder or a mental health condition. And that pre-approved plan is a way to work with that individual in a non-confrontational, hopefully best approach to resolve the issue without an arrest or without an emergency detention. One of the things that we learned in going through what we call a social autopsy, reviewed a case, a very critical case that occurred here in the city of Eau Claire, as we sat with law enforcement and a number of other entities from across our community, one of the notes that the law enforcement individual brought up was, you know, this person had no connection. And that's what kind of led to their demise, that individual's demise, is that there was no connection. This person was in despair, and had nothing. And that really struck a number of us sitting around the table that we needed to do something to get law enforcement information quicker and more expeditiously and more thorough as they respond to the calls.
So again, family connections are always preserved and strengthened, and in family services, this is some of the ways in which this looks. In the Children and Family Services area, we're working really hard to be responsive instead of reactive and not operating always in crisis. We're engaging with intensive permanency services. We've applied for a grant to be able to help us support being coached and trained and led through ALEA for a new way of being able to respond to kids who are in out-of-home care. Their work in delivering and working with jurisdictions in the IPS, Intensive Permanency Services, is to reduce that out-of-home care by 85%. That is significant, and that is why we are engaging with them to be able to have that reduction so that children can be in their permanent places. We're working on new ways. So a couple weeks ago, I was told a story by a social worker who, and I'm going to tell you this real high level, in which she was working with a mom and her kids. And they were in a place of crisis. And she said, Diane, here's what I did, is I connected them with family who live way, way, way out of this area, I want to say. I connected them with family who didn't even know that this mom had these children, and I helped to reconnect them. And I kept from placing these 4 children. And so I asked this social worker, I said, is this different than what you would have done before? She said, absolutely. 2 months ago, I would have placed these children. That is how I knew how to do this. That is how I knew how to respond. And now I've learned something new. And we're moving forward in that way. And those kids are with family, and they're safe, and they're okay. And we've not created more trauma for that family. This work is decreasing placements. It's increasing more in-home services for families. And I want to tell you a little bit about our SPARK program. SPARK is the Supporting Positive Actions, Resilience, and Knowledge. I did not come up with the name. The kids did. The kids are our youth who are involved in our youth justice services. And this is a program that is focused on alternative to secure or non-secure placements. It serves moderate to high-risk youth who are involved in the youth justice system. And the focus is to divert, to keep youth in the community, reduce out-of-home placements, and to prevent reentering the criminal justice system. It's through evidence-based programming and services. They're focused on developing character, career development, skill development, mentoring, and family involvement. Just in a 6-month period, in a comparison, for our non-secure placement, so this is a placement to a facility that's not secured. In 2017, for the year, we had 52 days at that facility. For the first 6 months in 2018, 8 days. In 2017, we had 375 days of secure detention time for youth. In our first 6 months, 37 days. Now, it isn't just because of the SPARK program, but the SPARK program has been a significant contributing approach, along with our other approaches, in which we are seeing some pretty impressive outcomes for the youth that we are serving. Family connections are always preserved and strengthened across the agency, also in economic support. So in economic support, as you know, we're part of a 10-county consortium with the Great Rivers Consortium. We are the lead agency for this consortium, and it's many times looks like a call center. People can apply online, they can call in, and what we know that is oftentimes things change in people's lives, and they have to call in and make changes, but sometimes aren't able to follow all the directions of online or through the call system, and they struggle. And they get frustrated. And that causes a whole rippling effect. And so we have increased how we are connecting with people by making someone available when somebody walks into the department. And if they're having questions that we can't quickly answer, we're connecting them right away to a live person to be able to help walk them through. And it's made people being able to get connected to the services much faster and has reduced the concerns that have come in that area. In addition, economic support is going and working with people in the jail twice a month to be able to help make connections so that when individuals are leaving, going out into the community, they are connected with their health care and being able to get services that they might need through those economic support services. The Great Rivers Consortium continues to truly be a leader in helping to think about how to do things in new ways, not just efficiently, but being able to work to better outcomes for those we're serving.
Sure, I can talk about that. So we also want to talk just briefly about some of the collaborations that we have going on. And one of the things that we are doing, a couple of different areas where we are working, is with the university. And with the university, we're working with about 20 students who are coming into the jail for us. and doing some in-depth kind of interviews with individuals. What they are doing is they're looking at ACEs. ACEs is Adverse Childhood Events, getting a feel for that. Also doing a mental health status exam on where they are psychiatrically, what has their history been like, what kind of symptoms do they have, what kind of symptoms have they had historically. And so they're providing that information to us in collaboration with us so that we can build programs that hopefully can mitigate them from even coming in through our doors, of the legal system, so that we can treat them in a way that is more proactive versus reactive. The other one is the jail services that we have going on, and I think folks certainly know a little bit about this, but just very briefly, we have a social worker who is in the jail who works on discharge planning. Call it discharge, I'm not sure that's the right term for it, but release planning, and making sure that individuals have some access to resources once they get out. Far too often, I think what we see is people rotating back through or returning back through rather quickly because they don't have the kinds of resources. This worker has been assigned specifically to work every day in the jail to help bridge that gap between the day they get released out and making sure that they stay out. The other one that we have is we also have crisis workers going in there. Oftentimes, and we can use a different area of medical assistance to bill for this, people who are suicidal or having feelings of suicide, we're able to go in. So we use a different staff to go in and meet with that individual. And we work closely with jail staff so that we get those prioritized and we see those first thing in the morning. And I think the other one actually that we have is, and Diane touched on it a little bit, is that connection right into our clinic, to be able to say to folks when they get out and even before they get out, let's begin that therapeutic relationship. We also know that Maslow would say the lowest rung on the triangle is making sure that people are secure, safe, have food, have heat, have shelter, those kinds of things. And we know that that's the most critical. And so we address that first right up front, and then we have the backup therapeutic services to help keep them out.
So we know that you hear a lot about or have heard about the jail and being overpopulated, and so being able to help work with the Sheriff's Department and the staff in the jail to help calm and bring a more calm environment to the jail has been a top priority. So we've worked with being able to help provide those contracted case management services, our social worker and our crisis services, and there has become a better flow for operations within the jail. We also are working with WIC for earlier connection to economic support services, and we are involved in many different community initiatives, but also want to note the homelessness work. We're involved with that core group for really assessing how to respond to the homelessness in our community.
So one of the things that that is a real challenge is continuing to fly this plane called Human Services in the direction that we're going, because we have to keep doing what we're doing, but we're also rebuilding it. And so we're doing that in midair. And that's a bit of a challenge to fly and build at the same time. It really takes, again, a lot of toll on our staff, and it is a real challenge. But we know that by the time we're done building this plane, that we will have better outcomes. It'll go further. Your dollars will go further. Our dollars will go further, and we will have better outcomes for those riding in our plane.
So as we said, we are focused on healthy, beloved connections, on community-based and family-strengthening services. And we're focused on that in everything that we are doing, in all that we are doing, and how we are doing this. It is the key. Our staff are rejuvenated. We are seeing increased staff retentions, decrease in complaints, decrease in placements. Now, we've just started this work. We've been working with Aaliyah just since April, and so we have done a lot, and we're helping to get the message out that we are looking at doing things in a new way. So thank you very much for listening to us today, and do you have any questions?
I don't see any questions, but obviously this is a huge task, to say the least. Did I miss someone? Supervisor Stelgis, please.
Yes, thank you. Diane, I commend you for taking the initiative to doing all these changes and whatnot. It certainly sounds very positive. Since our budget cycle, I've stayed fairly confused about the outpatient clinic. There was all this talk about 20 new positions, and I never really understood exactly what those people were going to do, how many of them we actually have today. Could you just try to clarify that for me?
I can do that. So we were granted by all of you, and thank you, 28 new positions, 28 FTs and 27 people, I want to say, for our 2019 budget. I don't have the exact numbers right here, so don't quote me on the exactness of this, but 7 of those positions were related to family services. So that involved social workers, 2 or 3 social workers, a supervisor, and maybe a support staff within that. We also were approved for another therapist that we'll be bringing on board for our outpatient clinic, and then some staff, fiscal staff, to be able to help support the operations of the Comprehensive Community Services Program, service facilitators for the Comprehensive Community Services Program, another mental health professional, and AODA professional for Comprehensive Community Services Program. So the majority of the staff are for the continued building of the CCS program. The outpatient clinic is another service area in which we currently have 3 therapists, and we are going to be recruiting for another therapist later this year.
So, am I correct in understanding that instead of referring people to a third party, we are now providing these services in-house with these new positions? Is that correct?
So for yes, and if that is a good fit for them, people still have choice for where they would like to be able to go and receive their mental health services, but we have the ability to provide that in-house.
Thank you. Supervisor Crunk?
I just wanted to also say thank you so much for all the work that's being done. I'm just really, really excited about it and grateful for it. I kind of wanted to ask if there's been talk with people that are in the jail, with the jail study population going on, with the ACEs being asked. Is there, for people that are there for, let's say, maybe a significant amount of time, has there been talk with the case manager or the social worker to preserve and strengthen families while people are in the jail? I know that there's visitation. I know that it can be a hardship for people because phone calls are astronomically expensive. So in people that I've talked to, that becomes a barrier for people to call or stay connected. So I don't know if, and I don't want to put you on the spot to say there's a fix-it solution, but I'm just wondering if that's part of the forecast of the work being done for the future.
Yes. Yes, and that's developing work, because that's changing systems of how we have thought about delivering and responding with individuals who are incarcerated, and being able to look at how we can make those connections, because when we can make those connections for them to be supported by family and who they identify as family, then that helps people have support systems back in the community.
Supervisor Buchanan, please.
I also just wanted to give my sincere thank you for everything that you said and all of the extremely hard work, and was really appreciative to hear that trauma focus and how it just it breaks my heart when we think about at the state and national level how we treat like issues of mental health, and we hear these arguments of good guy versus bad guy all the time, especially when it comes to our criminal justice system, and how so many of the people that are in our jails and our prisons, it's not actually good guy versus bad guy. It is what is that trauma that's happening earlier on. One of the most rapid drops of violent crime in American history was 20 years after we stopped putting lead in gasoline because people's brains were stopped being poisoned. And just we think about these emotional traumas and these physical traumas and the toll that that plays. So I wanted to say that I'm going to continue to look forward to the information that you bring forward, and particularly as we added that the mental health services in the jail, that's just a drop in the bucket for what I think is needed. And you know, if some people are saying maybe we need to be spending $2 million or $1 million a year on new staffing for more jail, what if we took half of that or a third of that even and put that into preventative mental health services instead of those kind of expansions? So I'm interested in seeing how that position continues to work out and if maybe we want to double down on that in future budgets.
Thank you.
I just wanted to share a little story with you. About a week ago, I had a call at home from an individual who was homeless. On what kind of weather? Below zero, looking for a place to stay. And his mother had called me. She lived elsewhere and said he needed help and he was willing to get help. In the time that came after that, he called and said, I really realized that I need help. I need help now. And his language was such that obviously his desperation was taking him in a really different and scary kind of path. I called our Human Services Department, asked whether or not there was any possibility of his being seen now, and believe it or not, on that very same day, he saw a counselor. Now, to me, that's life-saving. That really makes the difference between somebody really so desperate that they're thinking all sorts of ways to end everything, and having someone that they can communicate with and integrate back into society. So it was obviously a real boost to know that he could get help and get it so quickly when it was needed. So I really felt very strongly that the direction that we're going is the right direction. And obviously, as Supervisor Buchanan said, individuals coming into our prison system, it's not about what the action was. It was about what their life was 10 years before that, or 15. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Supervisor Anderson.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the recognizing of navigating sort of the institutional bureaucracy to get help is a trauma within itself is probably the most heartening thing I've heard this year. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Now we're going to go to our Corporate Council for an update on the change in the upcoming resolution for how vouchers over 10,000 will be handled in the future.
And I know what you're all thinking. You're thinking, oh no, the last report by a lawyer, how long is this going to take? Well, this is going to be the shortest report by far. So right now on your agendas, you have always have something saying you're approving vouchers over $10,000, but they've already been paid, so you're really not approving them. The Finance and Budget Committee has met on this. They're going to meet again. There's a tweak that we have to do to the county code that would allow you just to have the vouchers presented in a report form to you, and you still could ask questions, and you still have all of the information. You know, what happens after you adopt the budget is all these contracts get signed, all these agreements get made, all sorts of projects go forward based on what happened in the budget. Then there are some exceptions during the year where you have other ordinances or resolutions that you adopt that approve different kinds of payments. And then ultimately, the finance director is responsible to make sure that money's being spent in the areas it's supposed to be spent in the budget. So what's going to happen is the Finance and Budget Committee, and I will send out a memo with my legal analysis to you within the next day or two, so you all have that. But Finance Committee will meet again, and they will determine exactly what the action is that they need to take. My understanding is that will come back in March, the first meeting in March hopefully, and then in the second meeting in March, if that is approved, what you would get, instead of something saying you have to approve the vouchers, you just get a report listing those. If you would actually have to approve the vouchers because of all of the different payment times, you'd probably have to meet 3 times a month just to do that. The end.
Well, thank you so much. Within your packet, you have 2 reports. One is the final report for the 2018 contingency fund, and then also the very first report on the 2019 contingency report. Under our next item, we have communications, claims, and petitions. And we did receive a communication in regard to an application for rezoning from owners Charles and Betty Lunn in the town of Drammen. You have a copy of that within your material. And then we have the first reading of the ordinances by committee.
File number 104 is to amend section 2.90.070 of the code, destruction after request for inspection, to amend section 2.90.280 of the code, destruction pending litigation, and to amend section 2.90.285 of the code, microfilming or electric format storage of department records.
That ordinance will be back at our next meeting. And now we go on to the reports of standing committees and communications by boards. The first one is on the Committee of Administration.
File number 102 is requesting changes in the statutory bidding requirements for public work construction projects.
Supervisor Ray Henning, would you like to give a brief explanation of this? Oh, excuse me, I should ask for a motion first. Motion by Supervisor Anderson, seconded by Supervisor Buchanan. Now, please.
This makes it easier for the county to operate instead of going out for bid limited to $25,000 every time you're going to bid. We're asking the legislator to change it to $100,000, and that way you don't have to go out for bids every time that you're going to do something. With the cost of operation today, it's different than it was years ago.
Are there any questions or comments in regard to this? I'm not seeing any, so would you please take, excuse me, I missed one. Supervisor Stelgis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I understand what's behind this, and reading in the fact sheet, it says that we would still use a request for quote process for items under the $100,000 threshold. But is there anything in the code or procedure that would actually require us to do that? Or is that just a statement that's sort of nice to be? I mean, I'd like to see us still solicit competitive quotes for things under this, but I don't see where we would actually be required to do so.
Well, this doesn't mean that we have to or we can't do it. We can still go out if we want to. But sometimes something could be $30,000 and here your hands are tied. So it depends on what it's going to be used for. And
right, but
maybe Keith can.
What I'm seeing here is a subtlety between a formal bid process, which has a lot of overhead associated with it, I understand that, versus a more simple RFQ process, but still soliciting competitive bids. And I would think that the second part of that should not be optional.
And I can say that within the construct of Eau Claire County, as we look at our purchasing practices and policies, we would still utilize those more informal practices in order to ensure that we are maintaining good competition and getting the best prices possible. So you're correct when you say that the intent of the resolution is to raise that threshold for the entire process, as Supervisor Henning referred to, where you go into the full public bidding process. Most construction projects are well over that $25,000 threshold. And so bringing that up is not going to significantly affect or be detrimental to our individual practices within the county.
Right, but the use of a less formal process, will that appear somewhere in a policy manual?
It is part of our purchasing policy.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Knight.
Yeah, just one copy editing note. In the, I think the second whereas, there's an in. Limits have been in place. It's the wrong kind of in. It's the no room at the end, and we want the preposition in.
Thank you. You're looking for editorial change with one N removed. Thank you for that. Any other comments? Supervisor DeLuca.
Will this affect how people find out about bids? Like, will it just stay locally, or will it be, more universal so other people not in the local spectrum would see our bids?
And actually, the county already utilizes a number of different services, and so our bidding processes are not simply local. They go beyond our local geographical borders even now, and we would continue to reach a larger geographical area as appropriate for bidding purposes.
Will that be also for smaller projects as well as the projects over 100,000, or only for those over 100,000?
Many of the tools that we're able to utilize currently allow for a greater reach in whether it be throughout our region, throughout the state, or in some cases even nationally. Not as much for a public work project because of the necessity to be on site to actually do the work.
All right, thank you.
Supervisor Chilson, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm actually very interested in Supervisor Stelgis's question, and I think it's a very good one. And for my own clarification before I vote tonight, just so I'm understanding that even though we are going to move the threshold for the competitive bid process, our formal policy is that we will require multiple quotes on purchases up to $100,000. That's in our ordinance. That's how our bidding procedures work, and that policy will stay in place and will not change.
Well, I can't say that it won't change. It's actually at the discretion of the board. And so one of the things that I do know is that the Finance and Budget Committee will likely be taking this up as a financial policy to actually look at the language that has been in the code for some time, review that, ascertain if those are the thresholds they want, either recodify those in the form of the financial policy or change them as they feel are appropriate.
So the move tonight then would be from this body over to the Finance and Budget Committee for further clarification to...
No, actually, what you're doing with this resolution is you are recommending changes to state statute.
Okay.
And so we are asking the state of Wisconsin to change their legislation. That does not necessarily affect what we have in place at an ordinance level or financial policy level. It doesn't take away your discretion.
So then we'll be reviewing that policy at a Finance and Budget Committee level? Is that what you're
Yes, sir,
saying?
you will.
Okay, very good.
I do not have anyone else who apparently is willing or wanting to have a question on this, so would you take your keypads, please? And I'm going to have you read again the resolution.
It's requesting changes in the statutory bidding requirements for public work construction projects.
Thank you. And please, take your keypad and vote.
22 ayes.
And that passes, 22 are in favor and 7 absent. Move on to the Committee on Human Resources, file on 106.
Authorizing reallocation of 1.5 FTE Administrative Associate 2 to 1.5 FTE Administrative Associate 3.
And is there a motion? Supervisor Miller and seconded by Supervisor Gatlin. Explanation by Supervisor Miller or Supervisor Gatlin? Thank you.
This is pretty self-explanatory in the fact sheet. This 0.5 FTE has been vacant since October 18 in the IS department, and the PD has been evaluated, and because of the duties and the functions of that position, they're already doing back support tech duties, and they're going to be key person in the redesign of the county website. So it's better described as an Administrative Associate 3.
Thank you for that explanation. Are there any other questions or comments in regard to this? Seeing none, would you take your keypad then and vote on file 1819-106? She has stepped out, I believe. And so I think that with that in mind, we have a total of 21 with one individual absent from the vote. So it passes. And on that same committee, 1819-108,
Abolish 1 FTE payroll assistant and create 1 FTE payroll specialist position.
is there a motion? By Supervisor Gatlin and seconded by Supervisor Lavelle. Explanation by Supervisor Gatlin.
This too is only a change of title because the position description has been updated to better describe the duties, and it remains in the same compensation level.
Thank you for that explanation. Are there any questions, comments? If not, please take your keypad and vote. And that passes unanimously. And so we will go on to the Committee on Planning and Developing, file 1819-101.
A resolution approving an all-hazard mitigation plan for Eau Claire County.
Is there a motion? Supervisor Coffey, seconded by Supervisor Jansen. And you've had a really good discussion earlier this evening in the reasons for this. And I'm going to ask Supervisor Gibson if he would just like to make additional comments. Do you have anything to add? Oh.
All right, there we go.
Thank you.
I really don't have anything to add. Tyler did a really good job of explaining the details of it, and it's a plan that gets reviewed by Planning and Development every 5 years, and Tyler did a good job of explaining the purpose and what this does for the county. So I guess at this point, I just ask for approval of the board.
Are there any questions at all? Seeing none, would you please take your keypad and vote? Supervisor Russell? Thank you.
And Supervisor Lavelle?
And that passes unanimously. File 1819-100.
Amending the 1982 official zoning district boundary map for the town of Lincoln.
Is there a motion? Supervisor Henning, and a second, Supervisor Nyman. Explanation, Supervisor Gibson.
Thank you. Yeah, this is to rezone 13 acres from AP Agriculture Preservation District to the A2 Agriculture District to divide the existing home and outbuildings and the non-tillable land from the remainder of the property, which the rest of it will remain in agriculture production. Now, this was addressed at the Town of Lincoln's board meeting, and they recommended approval. It was reviewed by the Planning and Development Department, and they recommended approval of this. The Planning Development Committee had held a public hearing on it, and we voted recommend approval also.
Thank you for that explanation. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing, oops, missed somebody. Supervisor DeLuca.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, I noticed that the soils, there were 5 listed soils. 4 of them are 2s and 3s, which are good agricultural soils. And I was just surprised that in the packet, normally we get the soil information as well as the gradient information. So I was just wondering why that wasn't in the packet, and kind of why we're passing this when we have good agricultural soils.
Would you like to expand on your explanation, Supervisor Gibson?
Sure. As far as soils, I don't know why it's in there, not in there. This was just to consolidate the buildings, and where the buildings are and the land that gets consolidated is not farmed. It's a non-agricultural, non-tillable part of the acreage. But the balance of this will, where it is tillable, will continue to be farmed. And as we review these, we do go through all the zoning requirements and everything else, so those have been followed. But yeah, there was some wetland and stuff north of the house too, so.
And does that answer your question or satisfy your concern?
Yeah, in some aspects, yes. So I guess my question was, is there, normally we get, we're gonna change this 13 acres and it's part of 80 acres. It didn't really tell us what it was part of. It just said the other part was going to be still in agricultural. So I was wondering, are the soils that are listed, is that in the agricultural side? So that's why I was confused in this without the other documentation to look at that information. Thanks.
I guess I don't know how to answer that one. Everything's been followed. We look at all the zoning codes. We look at the land that's tillable, which this is not part of. This is only to consolidate the buildings.
Ron Essinger is here. Maybe we could ask him to make a comment. Would you be willing to do that? You can either use the mic back there or come to the podium.
Okay. Just to touch base a little bit, in your packet, we do have some soil descriptions under Standard 1 in the staff report. We do have those, that information. Typically, you're right, when we have the soils, prime soils, class 1, 2, or 3 soils, we do tend to not support those. In this particular case, as it's outlined in the staff report, there are a couple class 2 soils that were noted. However, those soils were noted in the 13 acres where the existing farmstead and the buildings were already identified. And as pointed out, there's also a smaller wetland. So essentially, we're not taking that land out of crop production. It's already removed or out of crop production. So we did point that out, and just to kind of questions. Is there other?
Thank you for that explanation. I do think it's important to also recognize that this is not the only body that looks at this. Town board supported this fully, as did the committee, so, and the staff here. So I think it probably has been pretty well vented. Supervisor Knight?
Yeah, I think the important point in this case is there's no loss of farmland. All the cultivated land is remaining in cultivation. It's just being separated for some land around the buildings and a wetland.
Thank you for that additional information. Anything further? Seeing none, would you please take your keypads and vote on this particular resolution? Supervisor Miller. You'll make it. There you go.
Unanimous.
That's unanimous. Thank you. And move on to the next one, and that's on the Highway Committee.
File number 80 is authorizing the purchase of approximately 42 acres of land located in the city of Eau Claire along US Highway 53 from the Wisconsin Department of Transportation for $385,363. Authorizing the county administrator to execute all necessary documents on behalf of Eau Claire County.
I would look for a motion. Supervisor Coffey, seconded by Supervisor Anderson. Explanation by Ray Anning.
Finally, we're getting to the vote on this. It's been discussed before the board, and the Highway Department approved it 5-0. Administration approved it 4-0. So I don't, if anybody has a question, it's been discussed quite a few times. Otherwise, I would ask for approval of the purchase of the 42 acres.
Are there any questions in regard to this issue? Seeing none, would you take your keypad? Oh, excuse me, I missed one. Supervisor Moritz.
Yes, just a point of clarification. So this is $9,100 an acre?
I didn't divide it up, I was just,
It says approximately 300.
$8,300 an acre?
$8,300 an acre?
Right.
Gee, that's pretty expensive land. Is this worth it? Where is it?
well, this has water and sewer in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, would you take your keypad and please issue your vote?
Unanimous.
And that passes unanimously. Could we go on, please, also to the Committee on Finance and Budget?
File number 96, this ordinance makes changes to Title IV of the County Code regarding revenue and finance.
Look for a motion, please. Supervisor Gibson, seconded by Supervisor Neiman. And look for discussion. Supervisor Pagonis, would you like to add some comments here?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. This is more of an update housekeeping matter, and it has to do with when there's a disallowance of a claim, if someone makes a claim against the county. We've changed the dollar amounts. It was at a a very low amount that was unrealistic in terms of dings, and just to allow Corporation Counsel and the insurance companies to settle some of the small claims. And for other larger claims, it would still take the path that had taken before. The prior ordinance permitted finance and budget to actually hold hearings, which has never happened. And so it's basically just cleaning up and updating the ordinance to make it more realistic.
Thank you for that explanation. Are there any questions? Discussion? Seeing none, would you please take your keypad and vote? And that passes unanimously. Then we have a motion file in regard to the vouchers.
File number 113, authorizing payment of vouchers over 10,000 issued during the month of January 2019.
Would look for a motion. Supervisor Laval, seconded by Supervisor Cronk. Discussion. And going back to Supervisor Pagonis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Several people asked about the Jacobs Well, the first line. I believe from information that I received that it had to do with planning and development that had gotten a payment, and I think that Supervisor Gibson could probably provide more information, but it was some payment that came in and then was subsequently reimbursed. So I'm going to defer to Supervisor Gibson on this piece of it.
Thank you. Supervisor Gibson?
Yeah, a lot of these projects, they're kind of bonded. This is like a security deposit when they go through all the approvals and processing for permits and things like that. Once, so that way if something goes bad or wrong, the county can, has the money already there to recoup. Once the project and everything is all done, that gets reimbursed to whoever.
Thank you. Are there any questions, Supervisor Knight?
I think my question's been answered.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, would you please take your keypad to vote? And so that passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is appointments. One to the Indian Head Federated Library System.
And the agenda item says that there are 2 positions. There is actually only 1 position that the county actually appoints. The other is appointed by the L.E. Phillips Library. And so the appointment is for Jan Doss.
Thank you, and we don't need any action on that, as I recall.
I believe that the board confirms.
All righty, thank you very much. So then I would look for a motion to confirm the appointment by Supervisor Henderson, seconded by Supervisor Henning. Any discussion in regard to this matter? Seeing none, all in favor of these appointments, please indicate by using your keypad.
Unanimous.
And that's unanimous. And on to the next appointment, which is Tim Sullivan.
And actually, Tim is with us tonight. As the board is aware, Keith Zames, our corporation counsel, will be retiring at the beginning of April. And we went through the recruitment process. And Tim Sullivan is a candidate that is being recommended to you this evening for appointment as a corporation counsel. And I believe the Committee on Administration and others would appreciate your support as well in approving this recommendation.
I would look for a motion for same on Ray Henning and second by Sue Miller. Any discussion? Seeing none, would you take your keypads and please vote?
Supervisor Maury, please.
Sometimes they need coaxing.
And Supervisor Bates.
Oh, dear. Goes to show you, there we go. Unanimous in little pause, but unanimous. And thank you so much. How about it? And we have completed our agenda and we are adjourned.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and Eau Claire County. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.